This will be the first in a series of tutorials on the use of text in Adobe software. So I'm going to be doing the basics with this video. So if you will turn to the application you're using, whether it is a Photoshop CC, an early Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop Elements, and any of its versions, you can work with this. And I do have written information you can request if you haven't received it. My email is mlfrost@verizon.net, and you can ask for the basic information on using the text tool. Or you can ask for all of the tutorials that I have on using the text tool. I had a folder called Copyright Practice Images, and in that folder there's one called Coral Garden JPEG. I'm going to start with that. Absolutely, you can do this with any image. It's not important to have the same one. All right, we're going to talk about what happens if you place text on an image. And since one of the common uses of adding text is to add a copyright, I'm going to be teaching the basics by just simply adding a copyright text to this photo. I received a question asking me, what is the best way to protect images from being stolen when you upload them to the internet? Well, the truth is there's no absolute way. The best way I have found is never to upload a large file. If I upload a small file and someone were to steal it, there's very little they can do with it. The second way to help protect it is to embed a copyright with your name and the year into that image, so that in order to use it, they would have to figure how to clone out your text, and usually that damages the images enough that it's not really usable. So to start, we're going to look at what happens when you apply text to an image. One of the best things about Adobe software is that if you take the text tool, and for that I go over to the toolbox and I find the letter T for text. I click on it and it gives me the text tool. The minute I take it somewhere, it's a little bar. If I take it anywhere at all in my image, it doesn't matter where I put it. So just click. And you will not only get a little bouncing cursor, you will also get a new layer above the background. Every time you add text to a document, an image, it will always come in on its own layer, which makes it completely editable. You can size it differently, you can move it anywhere you want on your image, you can further change the font if you want to change it. All of those things can be done because it is on a separate layer. So to start out with, it doesn't matter where I clicked in my image. It's just a good place for me to see what I'm doing. So in this image, I clicked in an area that is generally pretty clear light background, so I can see what I'm doing. And since I forgot to open my photo bin in Elements, this picture is covering up the photo bin area. So the first thing I want to do is go up and change in the view mode to fit on screen. And since that option bar is open, when I click Command or Control 0, it pops back into the area provided for the image. That means that this big area down below for the option bar in Elements doesn't interfere with the image. If you are in full Photoshop, your option bar isn't large and it's not down below, it's up at the top of the window, so it won't really matter what size your image is. But the way to avoid this is to always open the photo bin so this is visible before you open the image. The image will automatically fill that correct space. So I'm going to decide what I want to type in there. So to start out, I'm just simply going to type my name, just so you see what happens. So I come down to wherever you see a choice of font. It's down here in Photoshop, and it's up at the top. It's here in Elements, and it's at the top in Photoshop. And I have chosen a common one just called Times, but you know there are unlimited fonts that you can be using. But I'm not worried about that right now, because if I don't like the font that I've chosen, I can edit it after I enter the text. So never spend time worrying about the exact font when you start out. I happen to have Times and I have it set to bold so it's very clear in the text. And I have the 12-point size, and you can tell that by the height of the blinking bar. And if it's not the right size, I'll change it later. If I had an enormous font size and it was half the size of my page, I'd obviously want to change it. But this is reasonable size. So I'm ready to type, and I'm going to type what I do for my images. I simply put ML Frost. Now we will add the copyright and we'll add the year after we learn how to use text. So here's simply the text, and once I'm satisfied that I typed it in correctly, I can either use the Enter or Return key, or in Elements you also have the option of a green check bar which commits the operation. When that's done, I now can do anything I want with that little text bar, which is a separate layer. For instance, if I grab the text, I can move it anywhere I want it to be in my image. If I don't like the size, it's got a box around it, which is like a free transform box. And I get it automatically when I enter text. And if I get a corner, I get a diagonal letter. And if I drag that corner, I can change it, make it bigger in this case. Or if it had come in too large, I could make it smaller. And in addition to that, once it's done, and I don't want to make any changes right now, I accept it. Anytime you make a change, you have to use the Return, the Enter key, or the green check mark. Then I can go up into the Layers panel on the layer which now reads the text that I entered. And one of the wonderful things about working in an individual layer is I have an opacity slider, which means if I don't want the text as dark as that, I want it somewhat blending in better, I go to the opacity slider and I grab the word opacity, hold down my mouse button and drag to the left, and I lower the opacity, and you'll notice what that does to my name. I can make it whatever amount of darkness I think is appropriate for the placement in the image. If I had put that on top of the pink flowers, I might not want to soften it that much. And I certainly wouldn't want to soften it if I placed it over the feather starfish, which of course I probably wouldn't do. Let's see what happens. I'm going to take my this is a 47% opacity. I'm going to move it up over the clothes. And look how it's hardly visible. So I'm going to increase the opacity by dragging right over the word opacity. And if I put it up there, I would have to keep it probably 100%. And even then, I might want to put it in a somewhat lighter area of that flower. Why would I ever do that? Well, I would never put it away from the edge because it just interferes with my image too much. But if I wanted it to be so well hidden in the texture of the image that nobody would ever be able to clone it away, I could put it up there near the top and leave it in the hard coral. But I would normally put it, my favorite is the bottom right or the bottom left corner. And in there, it looks too obvious. So I take the opacity slider and I lower it down. So you can see that because text will always enter on its own layer, you can completely keep editing it. For example, I decided I don't like times. So if I go back and click on the text tool over here in the toolbox, I can say I'm on the layer with the text. It's active. If I click in the middle of the text, it becomes the active thing, and I can go to the right, select over that text, and change anything I want. So let me change the font. I'm kind of fond of a font. I'm going to use this bar, that is in C, Comic Sans, because it's a little more obvious. So I'm going to take Comic Sans MS Bold, and I've changed the appearance of the font. I've made it a little more modern, less like a serif text. And so If I like it, I try it out by using Enter, Return, or the green check. And I look at it, and of course I've lowered the opacity on that. But that's kind of a more modern looking text. And if I still wonder what else I could do, I go back and click on the text tool again, and that brings up the things I have here. And if I select the text, and remember I click in the middle of it to keep that text active, I then go to one end or the other and drag over it. It's already a bold font, but I have extra styles that are not natural. They weren't designed when the font was designed. They're faux, F-A-U-X. But I can add more bold to it by just simply clicking the bold. And if it's now reaching too far over, I take the move tool and just move it back. So once you've created text on a document, it's in its own layer. And as long as you don't throw away that layer and you don't merge it down into its original picture, it can still be edited. So if I'm not certain I'm done with this job, I'm going to save the document now as a PSD or Photoshop file. I can reopen it and I'll have the text layer there and I can continue to edit it. Sometimes I do that if I'm going to start doing fancy things to the text. I might save that text right now so that I could always go back to the stage easily if I wanted to. So this is the simple procedures in using text on a document. Now, how would you embed it permanently? If I save this file as a JPEG, it will automatically merge all the layers together into one file. Or if I want to think step by step, I can go to the Layer menu, come to the bottom where it says Flatten Image, and I will apply the text directly to the image. Now, when I save it, it is embedded in that image. So if I were to share it with someone and they wanted to get rid of it, they would have to imitate the background, and usually you get a messy looking image. It's a pretty good protection. But most of all, it gives you credit. So anyone who doesn't look at any further detail but spots your image on the web, they know who created it. So this is the very beginning tutorial on understanding how to use text in Adobe software.